Blah. Y'all already know what it is. Your boy Yaakov, what it do? The outlet to reality, the holdest podcast in Vegas and Chicago. What up? This is the place where you want to hide from your drama or maybe hide from your baby mama. Aha, just kidding. But anyways, fans, thank you for staying tuned. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Ching. And today we have a very special guest. It's an honor. I'm so happy to have her. Give it up for Rachel. How's it going?
Good. So nice to talk to you again after so many years.
Right. So I do want to share for my audience and everyone. Rachel is an amazing professor. I was her mentee, and it was a great experience because she definitely is an amazing dancer and an instructor. And I love the things I've learned in her class. And I felt like I grew, like I learned how to be more like a leader. And it's a beautiful thing. And I'm so happy. It's been more than 5 or probably 6 years we haven't seen each other. So it's amazing how it feels like it was yesterday. You know, I was just in your class and now we're here.
Well, you're a successful graduate, so we did something right.
There you go. Now, Rachel, I do want to ask you, right? And I'm very excited. So my fans to know you a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about your background, like what made you wanting to pursue dance and be a professor?
Well, actually, I started dancing when I was 2. They told me that I wouldn't watch TV. I didn't want to play with things, but there was a song that I liked that they actually had to go out and buy this was a long time ago, a vinyl 45 and buy a record player, and that all I would do is dance in the dining room and play the song over and over. So my dad says when I was 2, they said, we think she likes to dance. But I didn't really start until I was 9, and it was more actually because I was going to be an Olympic gymnast. And Nadia Comaneci, the first woman to ever get a perfect 10, had ballet classes twice a week, so I needed ballet classes. Then eventually ballet won out over gymnastics. In high school, or right after high school, I was a scholarship student with Hubbard Street, Chicago. And I danced for some small modern companies. I was able to dance part-time for about 15 years, but I had a bunch of injuries. I did actually go to Northeastern on a full dance scholarship through their University Without Walls program. And once I graduated, they hired me. First, just for one class part-time, and then it was 2 classes. And also one of my projects when I was in college was to help the department chair create the Northeastern Illinois University Community Dance Program. So it's Saturday, it's Chicago, it's freezing outside. I've been here all day with children teaching dance classes, and we also run a course called Dance Education. So dance minors and dance scholarship students will gain some skills and hopefully be gainfully employed when they leave. So eventually it became a full-time job. And so I graduated in 94. When was it? 5. And I still haven't managed to leave. I've been here ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that about you. You started dancing so young. So you got to be like the pro, like the top pro I've ever met, because I had no idea about that. That's amazing.
Well, by the time you were working with my Dance 109 class, I had enough injuries and surgeries that I was no longer really dancing professionally. So, and sometimes it comes up in some of my classes, whether or not they're interested in things like that. With the class that you were helping with, often it's just success to get them to know what your name is. So, they're not always, they're all new at college, and they're not necessarily all into, say, as much as some of the upperclassmen and professor, who are you? I'm spending my money here. I'm going to be here all semester. We'd like to know a little bit about you. So,
wow,
it just didn't come up.
Gotcha. And I gotta say, I do remember your class where you had one part, it's like in the classroom, you give like the history, and then the other part of the classroom was at the studio, the dance studio. And I remember that you had like little group activity where everyone in groups will come up with like their own choreography and perform it in front of you. And I thought it was so cool because it allowed us to teamwork and to find ways to, do a different movement, whether it's sharp movement, you're gonna kill me, Rachel, a sharp movement, heavy movement, and like it
Light
depends.
movements
Light movement
in the air, on the ground.
Yes, yes. See, that's how you know I got to take a class again because I forgot the last two. I was like, I gotta take it. But you know what I mean. Like it was so nice. I had a fun time, and it just these are like one of my favorite classes I've ever took, and I'm so happy that you had the opportunity to share all your knowledge. And I got to be honest, when we did ballet, it was so hard for me because you're so flexible. I was trying to stretch my leg and balance. And, I was struggling. I was like, man, Rachel, I don't know how you do this. You're like, don't worry, just keep
Well,
practicing.
it helps. It helps when you start when you're really, really young. So,
That's
but yeah,
true.
I tried to modify everything and make it. The class is supposed to not assume prior dance training. So, but every now and then you got to throw in something a little goofy to make people laugh.
Right. Oh man. And Rachel, I gotta ask you, so when it comes down to ballet, right? When did ballet finally become known in America?
I would say early 20th century. If do you want a little background?
Yeah, anything. I'm more happy.
Because it's actually related to another one of the questions that you gave me about women and being accepted to dance. And so, if you want to talk specifically about ballet, ballet evolved directly out of court dances in France in the Renaissance during the reign of Louis XIV. And it blossomed all across Europe and Russia. Around the early 20th century, there was a group of artists in Russia that wanted to try new things. Ballet vocabulary is very set. If I was in the dance studio, I would show you, I'll do it with my hands. First position goes like this. Well, you can see it. Second position, you put your feet apart. Fifth position, you cross them. Fifth position, arms are up here. You don't change it. And at least back then. And one of the reasons that they left Russia was because they weren't allowed to try new movements. And that group was called the Ballet Russe. They eventually, they performed everywhere but Russia, basically. They weren't allowed to perform. And artists from that company eventually wound up in the United States. And the first major American ballet school was founded in the 1930s. And it eventually evolved into the New York City Ballet. So the first school was called the School of American Ballet. And again, the first major ballet company in the United States was the New York City Ballet. However, if you were to talk about modern dance was evolving in the late 19th century and early 20th century. And so they were reacting against all of the rules and the restrictions of the, like not being allowed to change movement, or also a lot of the themes in ballet from the first ballets up until the 20th century. Female characters were like swan princesses and ghosts and things like that. And people in America in the middle of the Depression or World War I were like, well, we don't want to be ghosts and fairies and swan queens. We are real people with real lives, and we have things that we want to say. So there was already an awareness of ballet. I'm not sure if that would have been from people in the United States actually traveling to Europe, or how much of it was maybe companies from Europe doing a little touring in the United States, but it must have been in the United States to some extent. Either the audience from the US went there, or companies came here, or some of both, because there was a huge rebellion against it by American dancers who just said that it was artificial, European, not relevant to America. But I would say by the 1930s and 1940s, ballet was starting to be much more established in the United States.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm so happy you shared it because I was like, wow, look at Rachel. She's hitting that. Like I'm so excited because it's really interesting how dance, how it has evolved, right? Through different
Sure.
centuries, different areas. There's just always something where, some depending what country or culture, they take some of that dance and then use so it's amazing how it's like history. You're always finding new things, and I love the arts. And I do want to ask you. So I remember there was a research paper you made me write about was Jose Limon. If you can
Mhm.
share a little bit about him.
Sure. So Jose Limon was basically considered the best male modern dancer of his generation. He actually came from Mexico. His father was of Spanish and French descent. His mother was a Mexican. But something I actually read this week was that his mother had some American Indian blood. Now, I don't know if that is, but anyway, the point is he came from Mexico in, I think it was 1918, and he didn't study ballet. He was very musical, but when he went to college, he decided he was going to be a painter. And then some of his friends convinced him to move with them from California to New York, and he saw dance and immediately gave up painting, just said, I'm going to be a dancer. So 20 is very, very, very late to start dancing, but evidently he was very naturally athletic and worked really, really, really hard for several years. And so he ultimately danced for a company called Humphrey Weidman, which was started by Doris Humphrey and her husband, Charles Weidman, and continued his training. And he later became a very famous choreographer. And some of what he was really known for, other than having this incredible stage presence, and like I said, being considered the premier modern male dancer of his time, he was known for his style, which he studied with Doris Humphrey, who worked on a movement technique called fall and recovery. And ballet was always trying to be light, graceful, airy, because they were all fairies, swan queens, and princesses and ghosts, figures like that. Humphrey Weidman technique acknowledged the existence of gravity. And in the same way that when you bounce a ball, it suspends and goes away, but then gravity still exists. So they worked with those principles. He was also just known for being very emotionally expressive and pulling that out individually of his dancers to make them the best that they possibly could be. And one of the last things that he's known for, we're talking 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. It's not that artists weren't working in the United States before then. They did not have the same level of opportunity. And he's really probably the first Mexican American to be considered world famous. And some of the themes that you'll find in his pieces, unfortunately, I was looking up, I actually haven't seen these. I've seen the Moors Pavan, which is considered his masterpiece. But for example, I have a little quote here, Lama Lynch. I hope I'm saying that right.
Okay.
Page 22, Lama Lynch, based on a Mexican legend of love, politics, and betrayal, and danced by Jose. He went to his own Mexican heritage for the story, the themes of revolution, political intrigue, and betrayal that would resurface later in his work. So this is we'll look and see in his repertoire, music from composers that you would not necessarily have seen previously on stage. And also similarly, his last piece, pronounced Carlotta, is the story of Carlotta and Maximilian and the Spanish the Spanish conquest of Mexico. So again, this is themes and ideas. We've gone from ghosts, princesses, fairy tales. The first modern dancers were all female. And you see lots of themes in their work that dealt with the times in which we were living, which again included World War I, World War II, the Depression, the women's movement, things like that. And finally, we're seeing on the world stage universal acclaim for an artist who's of a different ethnic background and including themes, relevant to his own upbringing and his own ancestry on, major stages.
Wow. That is amazing how, this man started so late, right? This dancer, and he still became this very big time, dancer, and he changed, the industry, you could say. Like you said, he brought different things, Mexican traditions, and definitely I feel like that is so inspiring because being Latino, it's nice to see that there's different stories of people like growing and becoming like a leader and performing like their best and putting their passion into their art. So it's just a beautiful thing what you just shared.
Thank you. And yeah, I read something that said someone saw him dancing on stage at 48, which is ancient for a dancer. I made it to 34 with all my injuries, and that they said he was still like at the top of his game. He still looked like he was in his prime. So, I mean, football players don't make it. Maybe Tom Brady might be 48. I don't know. But you know what I mean? Right. Professional athletes generally don't make it that long. Your body starts to break down, even if you aren't suffering from injuries and wear and tear.
Right. Wow, that's amazing, Rachel. Well, look, thank you so much for sharing this and for being on the show. Guys, this is the Outlet to Reality, the holdest podcast in Vegas and Chicago every Tuesday. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Ching! You know where to find me. I'm on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, the Outlet to Reality. And my Snapchat is Take One Pass It. And my TikTok is at Yaakov28. And Rachel, thank you again for being here.
Thank you. It's good to see you again.
You too.